Harry Potter's greatest fear is fear, which is very wise, apparently. To help me become wise on this episode, I welcome back Christina from the restricted section. Hi, and welcome to Belated Binge Harry Potter, the re-binge podcast that doesn't take itself or the book too seriously. I'm Zach, your host, and I didn't read this series until my mid-20s. Today, we continue Prisoner of Azkaban with Chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
Before we start, spoilers, obviously. Language, definitely. Shout out to Katie holding it down for the bonus binge squad. If you want to join the fun and get shout outs in the episodes as well as access to bonus content and other cool benefits, check out patreon.com/belatedbinge. Let's get to Christina. Before we get into the chapter, welcome back, Christina!
Hello. Thank you so much.
Somehow we started a tradition, and I don't know if you even knew that you started this tradition.
What?
You were first on this podcast to discuss a chapter in Chamber of Secrets. Do you remember which chapter that was?
Oh my God, was it chapters 8 and or 9?
It was chapter 8, Death Day Party.
Wait, the funniest part about that is that I have a guest on the restricted section who only comes on for chapter 8.
Really?
Of
It's not
every book.
me,
Yes.
so I don't know how this happens.
It's not you, it's Nav from A Song of Ice and Fire Symposium, and they've come on for chapter 8, I think the last 3 or 4 books, and they're coming on for chapter 8 for the last book.
I think this is a you thing.
That's so funny.
You have a thing for 8.
I guess.
The Harry Potter books have a thing for 7. You have a thing for 8.
Well, don't you know 7 is the most magically powerful number?
It is, absolutely. Something about 3 and 4. I don't know. For those who may be new or just need a refresher, that amazing voice that you hear accompanying me is Christina from the restricted section. Please remind us what the restricted section is.
Hello. I do forget that I'm especially since I've been on this show a couple times, I'm like, I belong here. I forget that I need an introduction. But yes, I'm Christina. I'm the host of the restricted section, which is a raunchy, rowdy, Harry Potter slander, Harry Potter book club podcast where we read Harry Potter and then we're using our grown-up thinking brains and we're like, oh, we kind of missed a lot of stuff that we need to talk about.
That's fair. You also have a brand new podcast, and I didn't know if you wanted to intro that real quick.
Oh God, I sure do. I'm, for obvious reasons, kind of same as you, Zach, diversifying my creative portfolio beyond Harry Potter content. Just, expanding my horizons. So I have a new podcast called Burn Before Reading, and it is a show where we roast the writing that you did in high school and take a moment to reflect on how far you've come.
Specifically me. It's actually all of my writing. I've been submitting for every episode, and they've just been destroying it, tearing it apart the whole time.
I do hope to get you on the show to talk about one of your old songs or something, because it's really a lot of fun. It's a really fun show.
Honestly, it might be hard to pick something to do. Not because everything that I do is great, but because everything that I do is trash. So
Yeah,
we could
I'm
literally
with you.
just throw a dart.
I'm with you. I have a collection of hundreds of pieces from when I was a kid. So that's part of the appeal is it's I'm not just asking you to come let me destroy you. I'm also putting my own shit up on the chopping block. We'll just have to have you on the show a couple times because, we want it all. We want to destroy everyone's bad writing.
Oh, we just, we get egos when we have podcasts. We get our heads inflated, and it's time to bring us down a peg. The tens of people listening really just gets to us, and sometimes we need to be brought down to earth.
But it's nice because it's wow, I'm a really good podcaster. It's I'm cannibalizing the artist I used to be in the name of the artist that I'm trying to be. You know what I mean? Let me destroy this poem that I put my heart and soul into when I was 14 to make a really solid podcast.
Well, I mean, you could be doing it to other people. That's pretty much the internet, right? Like just destroying other people's work, so you might as well destroy your own.
Exactly. And that's always been my MO. Like, if there's a joke to be made about me, I'm the first one to make it. And then that's how I maintain confidence and agency in every encounter in my life. It's like, oh, you think I did something dumb? Well, let me tell you, I did something dumb.
I did something dumber than you even thought I did.
Dumber than Harry Potter. Just kidding. Could never.
It's tough sometimes. Sometimes Harry is very astute and very capable as a hero and a protagonist, and sometimes he's oblivious to everything that's happening. And that's as good a segue as any, I think, to getting into the actual chapter of Harry Potter that we're here to discuss.
Yeah. Over on the restricted section, we've been covering Half-Blood Prince, and I think it's the first time in the whole series where Harry is consistently taking action and making choices and like thinking critically. And so coming back to this book was kind of like like I've come so far with him so slowly. And then I'm like, oh god, he's just fighting with his stupid friends about stupid stuff in book 3.
Kind of is. Yeah, this book for me it's off to a really slow start, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first 5 chapters I feel like were a bit of a drag to get through, and now I'm actually excited to continue past that because I know that Prisoner is a lot of people's favorite book in the series. It's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
The one that you're in is mine. Half-Blood Prince is life for me.
Yeah, I think before I got to Half-Blood Prince on this reread, I thought Prisoner of Azkaban was like my favorite. Also, I like Goblet of Fire just because it's fun. But like reading it, I'm like, oh god, Half-Blood Prince is like so fun.
It is. It's a fantastic book just in it of itself, and then is a real standout, I think, within the context of the series for me. But
Yeah.
I really like I- the one constant thing that I've always enjoyed, kind of no matter what age or what I'm going through in life, is that like
Mm-hmm.
investigative type of a TV show. And that's what Half-Blood Prince feels like to me, with the stuff with
Yeah.
Dumbledore and the memories and that kind of thing. Like it's like a Criminal Minds episode taking place in the wizarding world, and like I'm all for
Yeah.
that.
Just like searching for clues.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not FOMO about getting to go to the candy store. But, that's where we are currently. All right, so we are going to talk today about this episode is going to be about chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady. But before we do that, in case you were obliviated or got your Hogwarts letter late, let's shove our faces in that white liquidy substance of our pensive.
Ugh.
In
Oh
chapter
god.
7, the boggart in the wardrobe, Snape was awful to Neville, even more than his usual level. We had our first class with Lupin, who let children face their worst fears in front of all their classmates, which goes really well and is actually a lot of fun somehow. But Harry walks away
Ugh.
feeling very emasculated because Lupin didn't let him have a turn, which Harry assumes means
Yeah.
that Lupin didn't think he was strong enough to do it because
Lupin
Harry
thinks
is
I'm a little bitch.
yeah,
I
because
forget. Do you do swearing on your show? I'm so sorry that I keep interrupting
I
you.
do, a lot of it
Fuck yeah.
sometimes, yes.
Fuck yeah.
But essentially, Harry's a 13-year-old boy, and a 13-year-old boy is completely self-absorbed and insecure, no matter how Gryffindor he is. And so
Yeah.
Lupin kind of really rocked him by not letting him face the
Mm-hmm.
boggart. And now, the moment that everyone has been waiting for. Priori, Incan chapter, where our wands connect. Not the tips, just the streams, so we can recap what went down in the chapter that we just read this week. As I mentioned, chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady. In this chapter, if I could summarize it, Harry doesn't get to go on the field trip and has tea with Lupin instead, who doesn't die from Snape's potion. Is that fair enough?
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. We're still hoping that goes the other way. Somebody kill Snape. Just do that, please. Can we do that? Can we bring Nagini in here a little faster, please? I just hate
Like
Snape so
a
much.
reverse poison where Snape gives Lupin a poison, but that kills Snape.
Yes, give me that fan fiction. Somebody write it and then point towards it, and then probably read it on Burn Before Reading, because there's no way that's actually a good story.
Yeah.
It opens with time jumping overview stuff. How everybody but Draco loves Lupin and Defense Against the Dark Arts. It kind of, here's the high notes. Snape's caught wind of the rumors going around about his cross-dressing boggart doppelganger, and apparently is bullying Neville worse than ever. Trelawney is annoyingly dramatic around Harry, and it's like spreading to his classmates who think he's just gonna drop dead at any moment in time. But we know the school year's not over yet, so nothing's gonna happen yet.
Can't drop dead yet.
No, we have to. Voldemort will always wait till the end of the book.
Yeah, which is very kind and polite of him and respectful of Harry's studies.
You know, I don't really think it's about Harry's studies. I think it's just the sanctity of Hogwarts. It's that, like, he wanted to be a teacher after all.
So he still can't help but respect the semester calendar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually lives off of it. This is his finals is all right. Got to kill that Potter boy.
God. We've been training for this all year.
He has yet to get his OWL in that particular subject. But maybe this is the year, folks. We'll find out after this. Hagrid's class now makes death sound like sweet release because he's afraid to do anything but flubber worms after the whole Draco and Buckbeak thing. If only he had any teaching experience he could draw upon that could help him be a better teacher here. If only.
Yeah.
He's in a tough spot. He really is. I don't know how you go from being, like, I know he's gameskeeper. So, is that like being taken from landscaping crew to, like, direct the movie? Like, what's the jump from gameskeeper to professor actually teaching a subject?
I think it's literally like, would you let a landscaper teach a botany class? Like, you wouldn't pick him, but you'd let them, I guess.
So it's almost like he should have but then, like, you have the herbology of it all, and I feel like that's a real disaster if Hagrid's doing that one.
That's probably true. Well, the thing is that, like, there's a difference between understanding animals in like academically and like just like knowing how to handle it. That's the difference between like a farmer and like a zoologist or like a veterinarian. You know what I mean?
I think so. I was actually like, the way that have always been hung up on it, I guess, is like he knows the material very well. He has no idea how to actually, like, translate that for somebody else to learn it because he has none of that training.
Yeah.
I know you're not a sports person, but it's like
True.
There's a saying in sports: those who can play and those who can't coach.
Oh, and those who can't teach gym. I saw that in School of Rock.
That's very true. That's why back in the chapter 6 discussion with Dan from Hogwarts, a podcast, I suggested that.
Oh, I love Dan.
Yeah, he was here just a minute ago, sort of.
That's so funny.
A minute in podcast time. What did we were discussing the possibility for a fictional spin-off where our golden trio is a workplace comedy and they're all professors at Hogwarts, and it was pretty
I've always
easy.
wanted the Hogwarts workplace comedy. It would be so funny.
Yeah, so we decided that Harry was gonna obviously be Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Hermione could teach Transfiguration. She is basically McGonagall reincarnated after all, but then we had to find a place to put Ron, and we were like,
Muggle studies. Sorry. Oh my god. Wait.
he would.
He would much rather be the Quidditch referee or whatever, but I think that Muggle studies would be very good and humbling for him to finally understand his father's interest in Muggle stuff.
It would be character growth.
Yes,
And
exactly. That's why I think he probably will go for the coaching job.
yeah. Yeah, he just gets to do flying lessons one day for first years a year and then referee Quidditch because that's all she does.
Maybe it's just because he's been on my mind lately, but I also would love to see that show where Cormac McLagan is the Quidditch coach and referee from the
Oh,
sixth book, because I've just been reading about him lately, and I think that would be like a
yeah.
very fun dynamic in a TV show.
Ugh, what? Ugh. He's the
No, I
worst.
know.
And you don't even have to be reading it to have a visceral reaction of like vomit inducing in the back of the throat. Like he's
It's true.
just terrible. Just
It's
terrible.
true. And as a woman, it's like, yeah, I've been on a date with that guy.
I've never been on a date with him. I've probably been him on
Lucky
dates.
you.
Yeah, so that whole section of the chapter is pretty much throwaway.
Mhm.
But what isn't throwaway, because it is the absolute most important thing here. Quidditch season is upon us.
Of course. Oh my God.
Wood is all wood and is graduating and not leaving without that Quidditch cup. Quidditch is life.
I maybe and I think I'm gonna have this problem where I keep bringing up the sixth book because that is what I'm reading on my podcast right now. But like I'm just like I'm 3 years down this journey in story, and so and priorities have shifted by year 6, and so in this chapter when it was like, luckily like Harry. Oh, fuck. It was something like, luckily Harry had like one shining thing to look forward
Yeah.
to. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that's going to be. And then I was like, oh, fucking Quidditch. Okay, great.
Of course it's Quidditch.
Ugh.
I wanted to love Quidditch. I did. I wanted to love it so much.
I know.
I
but
don't
it's
love it so
impossible.
much. Yeah, it's tough.
Scientifically impossible.
Yeah, it's just a tough thing, and I know it was, at least from what people say online, it was purposefully tough because the writer of it all was like, sports are dumb and I'm going to make this dumb sport that doesn't make any sense and
Well, she did.
yep, that was success because it doesn't make any sense.
Made a dumb sport.
It would be a great sport if the seeker didn't exist. Just get rid of the snitch and you
Yeah, let
actually
it
have
just be
something
basically
entertaining.
soccer.
Yeah,
it's like 3-dimensional soccer at that point.
yeah, it's three-dimensional soccer. It's got a basketball element. It's got a football element. It's
Yeah.
got a rugby element. Like, you've got flying, racing, brooms, fun, fast.
Yeah.
People can die. It's great. But,
It's great.
you know, snitch.
I think that like Harry can't be like our very special boy if he's like one of 3 chasers. Harry has to have a position he has to change the rules of Quidditch so that he can have his special position as seeker.
You might be right about that.
We have to elevate him above everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, he could just be good at it. That would be a good start. I mean,
Can't be normal, can't be the same.
you could have...
He's a special boy.
Yeah, but there are special people. There are professional sports leagues that exist, and they are very, very special at those sports. And those sports make sense as sports.
Oh my God. Zach, you'll be so proud of me. I literally have not played an organized sport since 8th grade, soccer. And I just finished my league bowling season. We came in 3rd
Nice.
place.
Nice.
Our team name was All 3 Holes. And me and my like best friends from college did it, and it was very fun. And I know that bowling is like, sure, it's a sport, but like I know it's not a sport.
It's a sport. It's also an activity. It's kind
I had
it
to
kind of
worry
blurs the line.
I had to worry about what my body was doing in order to get a ball to a designated area. Like, that's a sport, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's an objective. There's a score that's kept. Like, yeah, it's a sport.
Yeah. And we came in 3rd out of 8 teams. So that's pretty good, I think.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I well, I'll save you my bowling stories. Um, what do we got? So aside from Quidditch being life, everybody else is getting super excited for the first Hogsmeade weekend, except for Harry, because he doesn't
Oh,
have the
Harry.
yeah, he doesn't have the signed permission slip, and everybody thinks there's a mass murderer trying to kill him, but it's mostly FOMO. Mostly.
In 1 year, they're going to force him to play in a possibly lethal tournament with no one's permission.
Yeah. Hmm.
But you can't go into town, hun. It's dangerous.
Yep. Yep. Uh, in the past 2 years, he's saved the school, the wizarding world, from a mass murderer who's been trying to kill him his entire life. The evilest serial killer of the age. But, can't go get some sweets. With all the special treatment the fandom claims that Harry gets, he can't go buy a box of candy without a signature from his abusers.
I know it's really stupid. If I were McGonagall or Dumbledore, I would have just let him. Like, he's safe in Hogsmeade when everyone else is there too. Like, the whole school's there. Make Hagrid stay with him the whole time or something, you know?
Yeah, you almost say that he's more exposed by himself, isolated, even if he is
Being
at
grumpy
Hogwarts.
around because he's just grumping around the school and he makes his worst decisions when he's grumpy.
That's true. So that does lead me to ask you this question. Dumbledore knows that the Dursleys aren't going to sign this.
I know.
So was it his intention to not let him go?
Maybe because Sirius Black is on the loose and Dumbledore still has these like incorrect assumptions about him. Like maybe Dumbledore's like, "Oh, this is perfect. I don't have to tell him he can't go. I'll just keep him." I don't know. It just seems dumb. It's so uncharacteristically logical and conscious of Dumbledore.
Yeah, it's almost like he could have been taking the liberty to perhaps initiate some other activities that Harry could have been involved in during this time that his classmates were in Hogsmeade when he had to stay back at the castle. Perhaps some training, perhaps some meetings, perhaps some discussion, perhaps
Oh my
some,
god, like any
hero
kind of
journey.
priming.
Uh-huh.
Yes, because right now in book 6, remind me, do you do spoilers?
Yep, all of them.
Okay, because right now in book 6, Dumbledore is they're in the middle of their meetings with like the Pensieve talking about the Horcruxes.
Mhm.
And Dumbledore is like, "You need to get this memory, man. You need to move. We need to figure this out because he's dying." And
Mhm.
it's like, maybe if you had started even just like talking to this kid a couple years ago, you wouldn't be so desperate and behind right now.
Yeah, it does feel like, and I'm glad that it happened because otherwise the books would be excruciatingly slow burning. But the the plan, the master plan by Dumbledore was to move slower than that, right? Like
I
was to kind of
know.
it was almost like to treat Hogwarts as his training ground for Harry that he could oversee and he could kind of like make sure that he doesn't die. Um,
Yeah.
and yet he still almost dies every year. And
Yeah, but we still just really need that permission slip.
yeah, I do have the theory, like the Dumbledore master plan theory that I'm kind of I have it in my head, the notes, and I'm kind of workshopping it as I go through on this reread at an excruciatingly detailed level. Is it is part of my theory that Dumbledore has this particular year started to take more of an interest in Harry's happiness, not just his pulse, and
Hmm.
thus trying to introduce like family into Harry's
Hmm.
life, knowing that the one that he has is abusing him regularly. And that's why Lupin's here this year. That's his like purpose, his role. And it makes me wonder if maybe this little tea moment with Lupin wasn't almost planted and planned. Like,
Manufactured.
yeah, like Harry's not going to be going to Hogsmeade, so maybe have some one-on-one with him, Remus. Like, maybe there was something to that.
Yeah, it's like when I'm like, "Oh, I'm going out of town." Like if the girls are going out of town, I'm like, can you tell your husband to like invite my husband out cuz otherwise he'll sit at home the whole time we're out of town." It's like, "Oh, can you just like hang out with Harry for the afternoon or something?" Like I think that that would be for the best.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder if there wasn't some intention there and maybe it just sort of got dementored away because they became a problem.
So wait, so they became some intention where and the Dementors became a problem how?
Like, I wonder if the plan was for more of these meetings with Lupin to be more these like casual tea type chats
Oh,
while people are in
and I
Hogsmeade,
see.
and then the Dementors constantly attacking Harry and
Took it
making
over.
him like pass out, kind of like, yeah, it took it over, but it did also add that excuse and catalyst in for Remus to teach him how to do a
Mhm.
Patronus and that kind of stuff. So you ultimately kind of got to that one-on-one time, but it was more uh less casual, less like
Yeah, very
just
direct.
chill.
It's like a very serious tutoring section session.
Well, yeah, it became more about safety because these damn things keep trying to suck out his soul and whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
it couldn't
I honest
just be these two bonding, and
Yeah.
maybe that was the thought.
Anytime I think about Lupin in this book, like it just kind of blows my mind how close he was with Harry's parents when they passed away and like how much Harry's supposed to look like his father and like Remus Lupin. I feel like if I was Lupin, the first time I looked Harry in the face, I would have like burst into tears. You know what I mean? Like he
Mm.
has so much emotions about this kid that he's like holding back completely. Like he does not let on. He's like, "Yeah, I knew your dad." It's like we were besties.
No, that's a
And like
good.
I'm thinking about my best friend right now who has like a 14-month-old, and if she fucking died, God forbid, and like I didn't see that kid for like 12 years and then I saw her again and she's beautiful and she's like an adult basically, whatever, like a grown up, and she's talking to me and she reminds me of her mom, like, oh my God,
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
be sobbing.
that's that's a really astute point, I think, because I mentioned to Radio Mike in the last episode when we
I
were talking
love
about
Radio
Lupin.
Mike.
He's I that was one of the like more difficult scheduling things for us to overcome with him
Oh
being,
yeah,
literally on the other
Australians.
side of the world. Um, but I'd been looking forward to that one for a long time, and I'm pretty sure I didn't
I'm
stop
actually
laughing the whole time I was
right.
we were
He's
recording, so it was
so
great.
funny. I'm recording with him tomorrow for Burn Before Reading.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I always bring on you and Radio Mike for like my climaxes because you're both like very funny and you both are also very interested in like the nitty gritty of what's going on. So it's like a good energy for like the finale of a book.
You got to have nerds that also at least pretend to have a sense of humor, or
Yeah.
uh, four people think that I'm funny, so luckily you're one of them.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
the
That's great.
I mean, it's good odds. The shit, where was I going with that?
Oh my God.
Um,
We
no,
were
we were
talking
talking about
Lupin
Lupin.
and Harry.
Yeah, and how we were talking about how like he didn't let Harry face the Bogger, and how he was like he didn't pull him aside and let him know why.
Yeah.
And Radio Mike was talking about um how he has like an added vested interest in Harry more so than what you would typically have between like teacher and student and stuff like that. And I think the way that one thing that's always bugged me, I think, about this book is that Lupin didn't go out of his way at all to even just like start casual connection with Harry until
Yeah.
this Hogsmeade weekend. Like, it's been months at this
Yes,
point.
it's weird. I feel like he's been just really holding himself back out of professionalism. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and like you said, there could be an emotional element that I've never really thought about where he's like, it's hard for me to talk to this kid.
Yeah, and like as an adult, like he's like 30 or whatever, and like
Yeah.
at 35, I used to think they were so old, and it's like that's how old I am now. Um, but like he's like 35, and it's like, just like going back to me thinking about like my friends' kids, like I would recognize like I have a lot of like not only do I have a lot of feelings, but I have a lot of like very complex grown-up feelings.
Hmm.
And like I'm worried that I will get it on this kid if you know what I mean? It's like almost easier to keep them at arm's length.
Oh, like Snape?
Oh.
Like you're thinking about being the opposite of Snape, who doesn't just get those feelings on these kids, he literally lashes out and takes them out on these kids. Huh.
Horrible.
Funny. He's not even really, well, he's in this chapter, but he isn't in it yet, and yet I've still found a way to complain about Snape. Okay.
He's
So
the worst.
our next hit is the Crookshanks thing, where we have to be reminded that Crookshanks exists because Crookshanks is important
Right.
in this book.
Gonna become
Uh,
a thing. Yeah.
yeah, and it goes after Scabbers, and Ron's just trying to be a bro, letting Harry copy his star chart homework, which copying Ron's homework sounds like maybe the wrong
Danger.
play here, but maybe Ron copied Hermione's and it's just a nice train of telephone and they'll all get different grades. And but it's not the reason for it. It's the Scabbers thing. It's the Crookshanks is after him. It's the whole cat and mouse. And it's the thing where Ron and Hermione are going to start to have a tiff and, end up having one of those arguments where they don't talk for a while, which I could do without, honestly. That's not my favorite.
Yeah. I just finished one in Half-Blood Prince. That's the final one, kind of. Well, other than the final one. Anyway, but it's like, yeah, it's very fatiguing. It's like, please just talk about how you feel.
It is. And you know what? That might actually be one of those like leaky con type of a things. I had one revelation on one of the recent pods, and I did a little bonus behind the mic for it about the role of bathrooms in the Harry Potter series and how that should be a leaky
Oh,
con panel. Go ahead, think about how important bathrooms actually are. None of these characters ever just
whoa.
take a piss, but there's always shit going down in the bathroom.
Yes, it's true.
So I'm working that one out. I need to find the bathroom scene in this book. I can't remember one, and I'm really hoping that it happens at some point. But
Hmm.
you could do one with Ron and Hermione, I think. There's probably something there's got to be in every single book some kind of like these two are not speaking to each other moment. Like in all of them.
Yeah.
Blech.
Yeah.
Anyways.
It's very frustrating because as mad as I got at my friends when I was a kid, I never went weeks without speaking to them. It's like we go to the same
Mhm.
school. We're just gonna get into it.
Yeah, I can remember one that I had as a kid, and I didn't even know I was in one. Um, but I was it was my buddy who lived in my I'm going to use the term neighborhood very loosely because this was a rural area, so by neighborhood I
Hmm.
mean it was like a 6-mile bike ride or something,
Right.
but it was in the same community. At least it was just big circle. He was on the other
Hmm.
side of it. When the lake froze, actually, you could walk across the lake and make it a lot shorter. He had his girlfriend over, and we were all supposed to like meet up at the pool or something, and they were probably, doing rub and tug stuff and like really delaying things. And I said something offhand about like, why is she making this complicated? Like, why is this difficult? And apparently that pissed them both off more than I thought, because he didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks, and I'm like, I didn't know
Whoa.
we were in one of those things. And then he told me about it after we actually hung out again, which was very odd. Anyways, shout
That's
out to
so
Zach.
funny.
Um,
Another Zach.
oh yeah, we had a lot of Zachs. There was a bunch of Zachs. Apparently, all of the middle-aged, well, not middle-aged at the time, but what became middle-aged women in that area just liked the same name. Because there were, I think we had 6 in that school, and there were four in my class. And
Whoa.
this is a school that had graduating classes of like maybe 100, probably more like 80.
Whoa. That is
So,
wild. My graduating class was 1,000 children.
oh, so pretty small then, very intimate. You actually knew the names of your teachers and all of that. Uh, yeah. Anyways, so whatever, you could do that whole thing with Ron and Hermione. We're not going to do it because it's an annoying part of these books. What we do
Yeah.
have though, this is something I want to get your take on, and it actually comes from this chapter because we're bouncing all over the place here.
Hell
It
yeah.
is. I'm gonna set this up, and I want to. I'm curious from you, is being a like writer editor in real IRL. Do kids still say IRL? Is that a thing,
I don't
or
know.
is that like a
I don't know
decade
any
old?
kids.
Oh, that's
I
fair.
literally don't know.
That's
Yeah. I
fair.
only know babies and grown-ups.
That's true. I should probably. You know what? I don't actually want to know any kids. Anyways, I I can't tell if this is a character flaw or if this is a writing flaw. So I'm going to lay it
Okay.
out for you. It
Okay.
is the moment with Lavender. She's had her day
Uh-huh.
that she has been dreading will come from Trelawney, and it's whatever, October 16th or November, whatever the freaking day it is. I didn't write that part down, but her rabbit died.
Me
All,
neither.
all of a sudden, her rabbit died. Was ate by a fox or something. And this is like Hermione can't get over the hypocrisy of the Trelawney prediction part of this to actually be emotionally like empathetic to Lavender.
Yes.
She's too caught up in the proving that it wasn't a divination to
Yeah.
still acknowledge the fact that it sucked for her. And here's the part that is inconsistent to me. Hermione is like written as the emotionally intelligent one of the group, always telling Ron and Harry what they're missing and how other people are feeling and how they have to take their feelings into consideration and all of that. But she's wildly inconsistent with it because she's often in these types of scenarios where she can't do the same thing. And what I
Yeah.
can't tell is like, because if you go through it, like we have this incident with the same character that also has the emotional range of a teaspoon line, who's also capable
Mm-hmm.
of just like ripping Harry out of his Order the Phoenix funk and like interventioning him into whatever, but then also has the whole spew thing and doesn't like can't comprehend that hiding clothes around the common room's not exactly the way to go, and is not like, you know, reading the room, if you will. She's constantly in this like telling them how, but then can't do it herself. And I can't tell if that's she recognizes it when it's happening to other people and not her own responsibility and just can't do it, or if it's
Yeah.
just inconsistent writing for this character for whatever the moment
I
quote unquote needs.
I think it's a character choice. As much as I love to point out inconsistent writing on the part of J.K. Rowling, I do think this is a character thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it helps me that I like really relate to Hermione, at least in as much as like I used to be like a very precocious girl, and
Ah.
like on some level there is this like instinct to be pedantic so as to be perceived correctly. You know what I mean? Like, oh, but I said this. And like it takes a lot of growth to be like, oh, people actually don't need to hear that. And if they don't think I'm amazingly brilliant, like that's okay. And so that's something that like I personally have dealt with in my life as like I grow older. And the examples you were using, you were talking about this and you were talking about the emotional range of a teaspoon or whatever. And then you were going on. I think that like most of your like emotionally mature examples were actually examples from later books, compared to her now in book 3 being very insensitive. But then she goes on to, you know, help Ron and Harry figure out like what is happening to them. And, you know, she gets over her gut reaction to be like correct like a lot more by the later books, and she learns to kind of like only react in the later books. It's like only when she's like really upset about something very personal that she kind of like lets her emotions take over. But yeah, I do think that like she just in this section it sounds like it says like she sounds like she's trying to be comforting or something, and I really think that she's like, oh, once Lavender understands that it wasn't foretold by the fates, she'll feel better about it. But it's just like not true. Like feeling like it was foretold by the fates is like doing something for Lavender right now. In the fact that Hermione doesn't understand it doesn't mean it's like bad or harmful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've been ranting for a long time. I just feel for Hermione. She all of our main trio go on like great journeys in this series
That's true. That's
in
true. And
terms of
you're
their
right.
character.
The stuff that was coming to mind was later on because I just couldn't think of other moments where she had the opportunity to be the emotionally intelligent one, you know, from these earlier books. This is kind of like, this was the only one that I could think of from these first few books. It's just
Yeah.
interesting because it does, the consistency that I could find was she can recognize it when Harry and Ron are going through it, but that doesn't mean she doesn't still struggle with her own like in the
Totally.
moment, you know,
And like
things.
yeah, her reactions to stuff. And
Hmm.
like part of being emotionally intelligent, like at least in my experience, I'm sure there's other ways to get to emotional intelligence, but like in my experience, you have to start from a place of like great emotion. Like I think it's easier to be like a very emotional person and then learn how to like regulate those emotions than it is to be kind of like an under emotional person and learn to like force those emotions. You know what I mean? Which is kind of like what Ron does. Ron starts out very callous. And then by the end, he's like, I literally have to do the better or this girl will never date me.
That's
So I
true.
feel like she is starting in this place of emotional reactivity, and then
Mhm.
like she progresses to being able, it's like when they come to the school and they have these magic powers and they're just like blasting off, exploding all over the place, and it's like you have to teach them how to control their magic or it's gonna start exploding and become an obscurus or like whatever dumb thing Fantastic Beasts said about it.
Fair. It's also, it is interesting too. It may also be something to do with how studious she is, because
Hmm.
when she understands something from concept and reading and like essentially memorizing the signs or whatever, that's very
Yeah.
analytical and also like translatable to when your friends are doing something, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to she struggles like the one exceeds or the one like outstanding she doesn't get on her OWLs is in Defense Against the Dark Arts, because once she like she knows the stuff but she still can't always like get it in that moment of like, you know, and she, her journey magically is actually the hero arc that Harry probably should have had, where
Hmm.
like she freezes in these earlier books when it comes down to the life or death, oh my gosh, and then by the end of the books she's like freaking like master of the wand, and really
Yeah.
really good. But like she's not that from the beginning. She understands it all, she's very smart the whole time, but it's that like in the moment action driven thing, and maybe they're the two wires are similar, you know, in her brain.
Yeah. I feel like that is connected to her emotional regulation because like she fails to perform when she's experiencing an emotional reaction. So like the reason
Yeah.
she did so poorly on her Defense Against the Dark Arts final, and by so poorly I mean she got to exceed expectations.
Right.
Um it's because the Bogart turned into McGonagall telling her she had failed everything, and that like
Hmm.
elicited an emotional response, and so Hermione underperformed because she was distracted by her emotions. And that happened, that kind of thing, like the troll thing, you
Hmm.
know, like that happens so much more in the first couple books, and then she like gradually learns to figure it out until like the last book. She's doing all kinds of crazy leadership stuff, being like, all right, we're breaking this dragon out of this bank.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's like, okay, girl, whatever you say.
yeah, it's wild. Granted, the movies took some liberties and did mold us a little bit because she got all of the good stuff all the time, all of the time. Ron didn't do anything good,
That's true.
and Harry did
That is
very
very
little
true.
good with a wand in the movies too. But anyways, to be fair, she is correct, by the way, about this whole lavender thing to bring us back around. But it does.
Yeah.
We finally, and we're planting seeds for your book, because this is obviously what the intent was. Ron says something supportive to Lavender about how Hermione doesn't think other people's pets matter much, which is
Yeah.
obviously just planting the seed for Lavender to fall
And then
madly in love
Lavender's
with
like, I'm
him in 3 books, because that definitely didn't come completely out of nowhere.
in love. Yeah, it was interesting seeing this version of Lavender when she's just like, I mean, to Harry, she never is more than just like an accessory. He's like, this bitch hangs around.
By my neck, literally won't let me go anywhere without shoving her tongue down my throat. It's really a nuisance, Harriet. My lips are chapped. Look. Anyway.
Oh, I
So
love book 6 so much. It's so crazy.
it's the best. Definitely the best book out of all of them, and I won't be convinced otherwise. Until I reread it for this podcast, and I just get so annoyed with the Draco obsession stuff.
Ooh, I love the Draco obsession stuff because this is the book 6 is the first book where Harry's like not pretending. He's just like, "Where's Draco? I need to find him. I am obsessed. I need to know where he's at." He's not paying attention to me.
It is out of character because in that book, Draco isn't literally taking every second that he can to bully Harry, and so something else must have his attention, like being a Death Eater and trying to get Death Eaters into the school for something
And it's
awful.
annoying. It's
And
annoying
nobody
that
believes
he's
him.
right.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah, and that's
Anyway,
an
that is not in this
inconsistency that
book.
I'll get to, once we get there as well.
Years down the road.
So long. Anyway, he shoots a shot with McGonagall. She plants the seed for Neville forgetting things because we need to remember that he's forgetful later.
Right.
And another little baby divination I felt like I should bring up is that when Percy brings up the only things worth seeing in Hogsmeade, he includes the Shrieking Shack. Just because that's going to
Yeah.
be important later.
It's like if you think about it, like that wouldn't be fun at all to visit, really, because
No,
it doesn't make creepy noises anymore, and it's a shack.
you just stand there and look at it. Cool. But, we definitely needed to know it exists. And
It definitely exists.
Hermione and Ron head off for Hogsmeade without him. Draco makes fun of him, as usual. And Harry
Classic.
has to go back to the common room and give the password, because we also have to remember the fat lady exists. There's so many things we have to remember
Yeah, it's
exist
like
in this chapter.
remember.
Yep. Speaking of existing, Colin Creevey exists, captain of the Harry Potter fan club
Oh
that
yeah,
he started with
sure
Ginny last year.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. He's here for a second just so that Harry can go back out, because again, we only had this exchange so that he could acknowledge
Go
the
through
painting.
the portrait hole,
Yes.
yeah.
That's it. That's all it is. He goes to the library instead, but he doesn't actually go to the library. I don't know. It's a thing. He runs into Filch, who's a dick as usual, and he's just like wandering the castle alone. As we mentioned earlier, he just doesn't
Really?
know what to do with himself. And this is when Lupin like spots him and invites him in for tea.
Yeah.
And another little divination. They're all over this chapter if you read close enough to actually have to talk about it on a podcast. He mentions the Grindylow, which is super important 4 books from now, because otherwise Lupin's going to strike him dead if he doesn't remember this Grindylow from this moment. Thank God Harry is super observant right now, which is fully on character.
That's so funny because I thought you were mentioning like I thought you were saying that the Grindylows come up again in book 4 when they're like in the lake, but what you are saying is way funnier and more urgent because he literally would have been murdered.
Lupin has him like wand at the neck, just like, what creature was in my office the first time Harry Potter visited? And it's like, Harry
I would
doesn't
not
know what
remember.
color his socks are he's wearing right now.
Oh yeah, we talked about this on the podcast because because Arthur and Molly have that very funny Molly Wobbles exchange in book 6
That's a
where it's
good
like
one.
that's what it's so good. And I was like, what even would I ask my husband to remember? It would have to be like which one of the cats is your favorite? Like it would have to be something I don't know, man. He can't remember facts like that.
No. No, and Harry is
It's hard.
the most like unobservant character except for when the plot specifically needs him to be very observant.
Yeah,
And
totally.
alas, here we are. They finally get to have some tea together though. It's a nice little moment you think or would think, but
Mhm.
Lupin doesn't really like open up much here. You know, as you mentioned earlier, he might have some emotions about it, and Harry just has to like go back to thinking about not being allowed to face the boggart, and he's decided the internal dialogue for Harry is to not mention the black dog to Lupin, which is obviously
Yeah.
something that would be great to tell Lupin because
That could
Lupin's
have
fully
changed
aware
everything.
that Sirius can
Yeah.
turn into a black dog, but you know, we can't have that revelation yet.
Sure, that would mess up the plot. I
A
also feel
lot,
like
yeah.
Harry never tells anyone anything, so I do
Yeah.
believe it that he's just like, "Oh, I won't bother."
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, "Harry, you're such a dumb idiot," but then I think about his upbringing and it's like he was literally raised, trained to not bother adults with anything.
It's actually as as much as the as much as you have to separate the artist from the art for this, it's actually a really smart way to not break the plot of your young adult fiction books. Is like if these
Mhm.
kids did the logical thing and told grown-ups or like whatever and the grown-ups just took care of things, then like you don't have a book to read, you don't have adventures for
Yeah.
them to have. Like they have to have the adventures, and when you have so many like intricate things happening along the story, these books are really really long. There's a lot of stuff happening during these books, and like that's a
God, yeah.
lot of opportunities for like the adults to come in and fix something, or for something to be like
Yeah.
discovered much sooner if only this little thing happened. And while that makes for fun fodder on a podcast, like it doesn't make for very compelling stories when it's like, well, Harry told Lupin about the black dog and everybody knew it was serious, and then they went out and they caught it, they called canine rescue service, and you know, just whatever.
And then they gave him Veritaserum, and then they found out that he was completely innocent. He
Yep,
was,
and they used a time turner to go back, and he didn't
all his
have to.
charges were wiped.
Right, right. All,
And they
all
went
of that
back
stuff.
and they prevented Voldemort from being born, and everything was
All
fixed.
yeah, all of the things were fixed. Like that we love to just like talk about it. Those aren't good books. They're just not.
Sure.
And so this is actually having Harry be the type of character who does consistently not confide this type of information, and setting that up very, very early and tying it to like the Dursleys told him like never ask questions, and like he
Yeah,
couldn't
and
like
he doesn't I think in Sorcerer's Stone, he goes to McGonagall and is like, somebody's gonna try to
shoots it down
steal the
immediately. Yep.
stone, and she's like, shut the fuck up, you dumb kid. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I'll never try that again.
Yeah,
And then he doesn't.
pretty much. And well, I mean, he kind of Chamber of Secrets. They tried to go to Lockhart. They didn't know Lockhart was
Oh
like
God.
trying to flee. You know what I mean? But like Lockhart was the one
Yeah.
who was supposed to go do the thing. So they're like, we have to just at least tell this idiot what we know. Maybe it'll help him do whatever. And that
Yeah.
backfires too. Like, so it was set up in ways that's like, okay, you have trained this kid not to confide this type of information, so I believe it when he doesn't. And it's a smart way to at least withhold information that could break what's coming in the book, I guess.
Yeah.
But Lupin, when Harry like exclaims out like, "Why didn't you let me face the boggart?" He's like, he kind of was taken aback, like, "Oh, I figured it would turn into Voldemort, and that would be kind of a terrible thing for the rest of the kids to see pop up in the middle of the classroom. I thought that'd be kind of obvious."
Lupin, it's the kind of thing where you know that joke if someone's like eating in class and the teacher's like, "Did you bring enough to share?" Like in a classroom setting, you're not supposed to do stuff that like just one kid can't do. Like, why
Yeah.
did you do this lesson? If you and like why didn't you talk to Harry? I mean, I guess he just had the realization like 1 second before Harry went up. He was like, "Oh wait, this was a horrible idea. I've made a mistake."
That's kind of what I thought. Like I thought he figured this was a really opportunistic lesson, because not every day is there a boggart in like the faculty room of the school, and
Yeah.
that subject is what you're teaching and can be used in a practical lesson. Like you don't get that opportunity every day, and it could be great for like the class to see. And he's like thinking like a teacher, and then Harry gets ready to step up and he goes, "Oh shit, this thing's going to turn into the kid's worst fears, and this kid isn't going to come up with spider." Like this could be a
But
big problem. And yeah.
it's also just like, I don't know, like how much harm in this context of let's face our worst fears, how much harm could a fake Voldemort like actually cause? You know what I mean? It's not like he looks like a Cronenberg monster. Like he just looks like a kind of weird guy, probably in a lot of robes, maybe even a cloak obscuring his face. Like, how much panic is that really going to cause? I feel like most of these kids would be like, "Wait, who is that?"
Yeah, Radio Mike brought that up too, about like, and we started to talk about like what would the boggart even turn into? Like, does it have just like an
Yeah.
inherent intrinsic magic that just like knows what Voldemort is right now? And if that's the case, he shows up as some sort of
Yeah.
wisp, or like
Well, and that's the
does
thing
it
is like Harry
use?
would not even be afraid of the wisp version, you know?
Yeah, and I keep saying the full thing, Radio Mike, because I feel like he should be branded every time you say his name.
It's true.
He's like Voldemort. You should brand that shit. But he brought up too that does the boggart need the person to have like a mental image of what they're afraid of to turn into that?
Yeah,
And if
because
that's the case,
Harry
does
Harry
Harry
has no
even really like
idea.
know what he looks like in human
No,
form?
Harry has no idea.
Or does it just like actually pop up what Voldemort looked like before he disappeared in the middle of this classroom? And like he's this mythical lore that these people are literally afraid to say his name, and he just shows up in person, like in front of children, because that's probably not great. Although I keep harkening back to it, he did have a great idea. He's like, I actually think it would be hilarious. It turns into Voldemort, and then Harry does ridiculous, and all of his robes fall off, and he's just butt naked in the middle of the classroom, and it's hilarious.
I do like
Like
that.
that is how you defeat a Voldemort boggart, apparently. But I guess that, like but this is where this that tangent that I was on in the last chapter and kind of am getting to is like, Lupin could have headed off this conversation by simply pulling Harry aside after class and being like, "Hey, I know you have questions based off of the way that you reacted to this in the moment, like, and when I gave you points and stuff like that." Like Harry was not hiding the fact that he was not stoked that he didn't get to do
Yeah.
this. Like, I just want you to know that it hit me that that thing might turn into Voldemort, and I didn't want the rest of these students to see that.
Yeah. Just
And that's all it would
say
have taken.
say how you
Yeah.
feel, man.
Yeah, like that's all it would have taken, but he doesn't have any kind of personal relationship at all with Harry yet, which
Yeah.
also, like, that boggles my mind a little bit. This is when he creates that. This is when he and time has passed now. Like it's been months or whatever since this is when he starts to assess,
Yeah.
and he finally so Harry's been stewing on this for like months, weeks, like whatever it's been. Um,
The smallest things. I mean, I know this isn't like a small thing, but like when you're a kid, it's like, oh, he must think I'm a piece of shit, and it's like you don't even know this teacher, dude. He probably just like made a mistake or something.
yeah, so but he's 13 and he's going to go to the biggest insecurity he has, and right now that is
Yeah,
apparently fear, because he tells Lupin, I didn't even think of Voldemort. I thought of the Dementor. And this is where you get that
yeah,
like somewhat memorable, iconic-ish line of that suggests that what you fear is fear, which is wise, I guess. Is that
yeah.
actually wise? To fear fear?
Um, I think that makes sense. I think it also aligns with like I don't know, some kind of like philosophy that J.K. Rowling is trying to roll out here with her Dementors. Lupin's like, pretty cool idea, huh, Harry? That this author just wrote. But like I think it kind of makes sense because if you know how to react in like a stressful situation, the outcome will be better than if you're like very fearful. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 a lot, and like in D&D and Baldur's Gate 3, like if you're fighting with people who are fearful, that's like a state that they can be in, and it makes them like more volatile.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like I think fear like does change the whole thing. And like when you fear, you go into like fight or flight mode. Like you really don't have the time to be like thinking about how to get stuff done. That's why you have to just like know beforehand, like how to react in situations.
That's fair. Sounds wise. So here comes Snape with the potion that we know is Wolfsbane potion, and Harry thinks he's
Hmm.
poisoning Lupin. Lupin doesn't die, but little 13-year-old Harry brain is surprised by this. Why was this interaction so short? Because Lupin just like sends him on his way.
Um, I guess it's like just enough to make us suspect Snape without detracting from like the conversation. Like all we really need to get right now is that Lupin is taking a potion, basically.
It is. It just yeah. It feels a little bit out of character to me that Lupin has been so distant from Harry, as we've talked about a little bit. And in this is his opportunity to say, like, hey, I knew your parents.
I
We were
know.
actually
Yeah.
really good friends. Like, give this kid something, give him a lifeline, like, give him something to feel good about, give him like a connection with a human.
Yeah,
And
like I was your dad's best friend. That says so much. Like especially to Harry, that says a lot more than like I was your dad's brother or something, because it's like your dad chose me
yeah,
as his like best friend. And I think Harry would have valued that choice of James. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he like I trust this guy now. And like ultimately that's what happens. Is like Harry's like, "Oh, you knew my dad. Now you're my uncle."
he gets there, but it feels like it didn't. I don't know. I yeah, I posed these could have been uh planted opportunities by Dumbledore by knowing that Harry's not going to get to go to Hogsmeade, and maybe having Lupin here for a reason, and maybe he
Mhm.
wanted Lupin to start slow or something, like let's ease him into this idea or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it feels like he could have done more, and it's not like either of them really had anything going on at this very moment.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe he's
I
grading
mean, I
papers,
totally
but
agree.
like, come on. I know teachers
Surely you can
have
grade papers by magic.
right. You can probably grade papers by magic. I know that teaching is hard, but also he lives here. He's
Yeah,
not
that's
going
true.
home to his family. He doesn't have kids to like chase around. He lives here.
Yeah. He's
You can
working
spare
100% of his life.
yeah, he can spare a few extra moments to talk to Harry, who doesn't have class, doesn't have anywhere to be, literally can't go to the place where everyone else is. We
Yeah.
could have had more, is all I'm saying. We
Yeah.
didn't. We didn't get it.
Totally.
Ron and Hermione come back, give him a bunch of candy, tell him about their visit, all of that stuff. They mini detective about whether Snape's trying to kill Lupin and whatever. He's not dead during the Halloween feast. Again, our tradition. Halloween, chapter 8.
Hell
Anyway,
yeah. I was remembering the troll from the olden days.
yeah,
Thought you ought to know.
yeah. The ghosts do some type of show. It's all fun and games. I don't
I
know.
love this for them. These ghosts have so much free time. In fact, they have eternity, and they make up like dance routines.
To entertain the children.
I love it so much.
Speaking of not having anywhere to be, anyway, all of this is just fodder so that we can get to the last like paragraph of this chapter. They go back to the common room. Nobody can get in. Percy fetches for Dumbledore. Fat lady's gone, and her portrait's all clawed up. Dumbledore wants to lead a search or whatever, and I had forgotten this, but it's actually Peeves who informs everybody that it was Sirius Black that did this, and it's Peeves in his own Peeves way. He's, talking between his legs and sticking his butt up in the air in the headmaster's face and whatever.
But it specifically says like he didn't dare, like not give the headmaster what he's asking for, but he's gonna be silly about it.
Yeah, it's almost like he can't, and maybe it literally can't like help itself from being a tyrant, I guess, because of what it is. It's a poltergeist of like of angst and whatnot, and it has to do that, but also recognizes the authority of the headmaster and Dumbledore, of the entity that created it. So it's like I have to give you this answer, but like everything inside of it is like, what do I do if I have to give this answer to you? And it just starts freaking out.
Yeah. I don't remember if it. I remember talking about this on my podcast. I don't remember if it was something that we like looked up and confirmed that like a poltergeist is like a manifestation of like an energy in a place. And so like I've always felt like Peeves very much like belongs to Hogwarts, like is a version of Hogwarts personality. And I've also always wondered if there's some kind of like very real like magical bond or relationship between Hogwarts and the headmaster. And if those things are true, then like Peeves is like kind of like magically beheld to the headmaster.
I think that would make a lot of sense, because I think you're right. It is. I think that Peeves does have an inherent like attachment to the school in a way that is like binding. It can't.
I don't think it can leave.
Yeah, it can't leave. It can't exist without the like teenage angst of the I want to say participants, the students, the people, that are going there. And it's a breeding ground, obviously, for like exactly what a poltergeist needs to be there, I guess. But it
has a lot of energy for him to like feed off of.
Yeah, but in the same way, the headmaster of the school has like a magical bond to the school as well, in that like there's all the portraits of the past headmasters, and they have to like essentially do they have to like support the acting headmaster and like do their bidding and like follow their order, like that kind of like it's all kind of
the portraits have to support the acting headmaster, but the gargoyle that guards the office would not let Umbridge inside. So the school chooses who the real headmaster is. It's very interesting.
I think there's something to the independence of Hogwarts in it of itself. I think the reason that it wouldn't let Umbridge in is because Umbridge wasn't the headmaster appointed like by a headmaster. It wasn't like a passing of the mantle. It wasn't it wasn't somebody who was magically welcome to the position. It was somebody who was like appointed by an outside source who was in like
aggressively seizing.
Yeah, and so if it was like like I imagine Snape didn't have any problem when he became headmaster
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yeah, because it was always Dumbledore's intention.
it was always Dumbledore's intention, but he's also in the fraternity, if you will. You know, the like in
Yeah.
line. McGonagall wouldn't have any problem. Snape didn't have any problem. If it would have been Flitwick or another, I think if it would have just passed to a professor who was there, who was actually like
Mm-hmm.
chosen for their post or whatever, and welcomed into the school, not somebody who was forced in as like a mole,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe it wouldn't have been able to have the same resistance that it had to Umbridge. But because she was an a plant, if you will, the school was like, you're not welcome here. You've never been welcome here, and
Yeah.
there's not a single scenario in hell that we're gonna let you up these stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And if it wasn't Snape and they didn't have this like inherent what you call like agreement between he and Dumbledore, you think
Mm-hmm.
that Gargoyle changes from like a griffin to a snake or a badger, or like, you know what I mean,
Interesting.
like with the acting headmaster, whatever house
Yeah.
they grew up in.
I don't know. Either that or Godric Gryffindor was the first headmaster of Hogwarts
Could
and
be.
built it that way and was like, it's just gonna be this way.
Could be. I really like the theory that I've heard kind of go around that every headmaster had uh their own like secret room of the castle that
Hmm.
they created,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like in um kind of beholden to them, and
Yeah.
that the Chamber of Secrets was obviously Slytherin's, but that the
Oh.
headmaster's office is actually that from Gryffindor, and then there were other ones that were
Ooh, the room of
suggested.
requirement could be one.
Yeah, the room of requirement, I think, was I think some have suggested that that was Ravenclaw's like secret room,
Ooh.
and
Yeah.
then
The
and
kitchens
then well, yeah, the kitchens.
for Hufflepuff.
Yeah, I think I've heard the kitchens. I think I've heard the Great Hall, that kind of thing. And that these rooms, they didn't remain secret the whole time. They became like a
Hmm.
repurpose in some
But the kitchen
instances.
is kind of secret still. Like the
It
students
is.
don't know where it is.
No, very few.
I like
Yeah.
that head canon.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's
I always,
uh,
I just kind of, I heard that one day, and it was a new one to me, which, I mean, this
yeah.
series was new to me pretty late in life, but it's hard to get to something I've not read before at this point in time, and that one was a new one. Uh, anyways, that's literally the chapter. That's it. Ta-da! Lots of foreshadow moments, but not really a whole lot else happening. Even the
Hmm.
climax was the very last sentence. So,
Yeah, and it's like the chapter was named after it, and then I was like, oh, this isn't even what the chapter's about at all.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Chapter's about like everything, just a little bit of everything.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, let's do some house points for this chapter real quick in true Hogwarts fashion. These points are completely subjective with no oversight and fully at our discretion. I'm going to give Lupin 10 points for being a good dude and spending some time with Harry when his friends
Oh,
were gone. He needed that, even though it was way shorter than I think it should have been, but it was needed. I'm also giving 10 points to Snape for making the Wolfsbane potion correctly, even though I'm sure he's being forced by Dumbledore. He did do that. And this might be the first time ever that I've given points to Snape, and it might be the last time
yeah,
ever
really.
that I give points to Snape. Anybody you would like to give some points to for this chapter?
Can I take 10 points away from Hermione for the way she speaks to a grieving Lavender?
No, you can't. It has to be 15 because I was taking 5 for that. So now it's a total of 15.
And I would this is hard. I think I'm gonna give 10 points to the ghosts for their dance routine. I know it doesn't
I
say
like
that
it.
they do a dance routine, they're doing like a floating routine, but that's dance. If you're a ghost, like That's dancing.
I'm imagining they're on a piece of cardboard and they're break dancing in the middle of the air. That's what's happening right now. It's
Cardboard
wonderful.
in the air. I love that.
It's ghost cardboard though. You can see through it because otherwise you can't see the dance.
Oh,
You just got to see
okay.
the spinning
Yes.
and stuff.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
perfect sense.
Expecto plot changeo time. Let's rewrite Harry Potter one small change at a time. The expecto plot changeo question for this chapter is: what if McGonagall actually did let Harry go to Hogsmeade without a permission slip? How does that change the chapter? How does it change the series? Does it really do anything at all?
I just think that it would have not changed much, and Lupin could have just talked to Harry at another time.
That's fair. It's a fairly anticlimactic one. I probably should have come up with a better question. Yeah, because Lupin could have talked to Harry in another way, but we don't get the Wolfsbane potion.
We don't get the Wolfsbane. Yeah, it's just like less clues, like less information, because like Harry goes on to sneak to when he gets the Marauders map, and that's what I thought this chapter was about to be, and then I was like, ugh, we don't even get that yet. But he like sneaks to Hogsmeade, and that's when like Harry sees him. I know, sorry, Draco like sees him there when he like the invisibility cloak like slips off or whatever. And so I think but that doesn't amount to anything either. It's just like stressful. And so I think that like everything, the whole plot would have been just the same. It just would have been like a little less stressful.
Yeah, probably. But I would love to know what you think as well. I'll share this question on social media across all of the things. It's at Belated Binge. You can also leave a voicemail on the website, belatedbinge.com. With that, we've reached the end of this episode of the podcast. Thank you, Christine, for doing the thing. Plug the things.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Zach. It's always so fun to come on the show. You can listen to my Harry Potter podcast, the restricted section. We're on Half-Blood Prince. You can listen to my new podcast, Burned Before Reading, which is about the shitty writing you did when you were in high school and other cringy literary topics. And please pre-order my book, Indie Book Publishing from start to finish. It's going to be awesome. I wrote a book and you can have it. If you're remotely interested in being an author, getting published, check it out.
Nice. If you enjoyed this, please follow and subscribe on whatever podcast player you're using right now. Do the rating and review thing, please. It's super helpful. Let other people know that this podcast doesn't suck. Let me know that this podcast doesn't suck. And if you're so inclined, check out the additional benefits that are available on Patreon, patreon.com/belatedbinge. Thanks for listening and telling all of your Potterhead friends that their new favorite podcast should be Belated Binge Harry Potter.